Hey, Tara, jumping in here to let you guys know of a cool event going on throughout June at Streamily.com. That's STREAMILY.com/4kids. You can find autographs from so many actors from these 4Kids shows, some that we've spoken to, some we haven't spoken to yet, some who have never done conventions. Really cool opportunities to get autographs from characters that you might have grown up with. Again, that's Streamily.com/4kids throughout June. Check it out and happy shopping.
Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hello and welcome to 4Kids Flashback. I am Tara Sands, joined by my co-host who has not eaten enough for this interview. His name is...
Steve Yurko. I can confirm. Yeah.
You can confirm. Steve just told me he dropped his breakfast and now I feel so bad. And
like a fool.
Oh, no, not like it happens, Steve.
Yeah.
It happens.
Mm-hmm.
What was it that you dropped?
Eggs.
Oh, no, you can't pick those up. And...
Nah, it fell on carpet too, so that's especially, yeah.
I'm so sorry.
It is what it is. At least,
man.
I don't know. There'll always be more eggs. It's not like, I don't know, if
Will there, though? I remember there was an egg shortage at one point.
I remember that, yeah. It was a pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, that's since that brought me back to early quarantine days when toilet paper was the hot commodity.
Shortages.
It was so dumb. It was so dumb. It's just one person panics and everyone else starts panicking.
Well, you know what we don't have to panic about? Our interview today. We're going to be talking with John Kalish, who was a producer at 4Kids. He worked on Ultraman, One Piece, Ultimate Muscle, some of the trickier shows at 4Kids. And I need to talk about something that I learned over the weekend that Steve somehow has not told me about yet. I've been working on our YouTube page, and I want to get the biggest collection I can of all of the music of 4Kids on there. And in my searching, I found that 4Kids had a band called the 4Kids 5.
Yeah, I remember this.
Steve, how have you not told me about this?
There's a lot of things I remember that I don't know. I'm like, how important is this? But
very.
Yeah, that was a thing. Yeah, I think that they had music videos in between shows.
Yeah, they did.
Stuff. Yeah. Oh wow, you.
It so reminded me of, because I hosted a show over on Cartoon Network called Fridays, where it's adults trying to seem cool and hip. And that's how I always felt. And I imagine that's how they felt as well performing this stuff. So it was it's not bad. They're all really talented. So it's not cringy in that way, but it's cringy for me in the way that I've been there and done that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was my favorite job, but there were definitely times I felt silly and am I acting too much like a kid when I'm a grown up? But this band, so we're trying to, by the time this airs, hopefully we'll have figured out, I think, all of the singers. But right now I know the lead singer was Molly Weaver. I believe one of the band members is John Siegler's son, but I think by the time, we'll have spoken to him by the time this airs and confirmed all of that for you guys. Yeah,
if you don't know, we were talking from the distant past because... Yeah, we record so many that, I don't know if I ever said this publicly. I'm this has been my little hiatus project, I guess.
Yeah. Well, before Steve goes back to work full time, I'm making him. I'm really.
We're just banking stuff.
But it's great.
Not that it's going away. We're still going to record, but wow, we put in the time.
We're months ahead of time by accident. I kind of thought everyone would say no to an interview, so I reached out to too many people. And then people said yes, and now we have so much info, which is great, because then we can take some time off, which is actually much needed.
For sure.
Because, my editing fingers are getting tired. And
you're learning.
There's a hand masseuse out there that can come fix my hands. That would be great. Yeah. Enough about that. Oh, yeah. So, like I said, check out our YouTube channel. By this point, it should be pretty chock full of stuff. It's at 4Kids Flashback, obviously, because that's what everything is at this point. What
Thankfully,
else should they do?
Nobody thought of that. Like if you want, start from, like from square one, you could go to our website. That's 4kidsflashback.com, the number 4. God forbid you don't use the
You
number
type
4.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Patreon.
If you want to kick us back some money, you could listen to episodes ad-free and a week early over there. And as well as some exclusive video content we're going to put up there. More for your listening and viewing pleasure.
It's all about your ears, you guys. We are just concerned about your ears.
It's ear care.
It's ear care. We're like basically an ENT without the medical training.
Which
That's
is always
not at all what
assuring
we
to
are.
hear.
Yeah, on that note, here's our interview with another person who's not a doctor, John Kalish. Our guest today is John Kalish, who worked on what I think he was given some of the most difficult tasks at 4Kids. So he was really trusted with some complicated properties like Ultimate Muscle, which, talking butts, One Piece, which, again, probably the most censored show at 4Kids, and Ultraman, which, again, not easy because it was the first live action dub they did. So welcome, John Kalish. We have so many questions for you, but thank you for being
here.
Sure,
I hope I can answer them. I didn't know that One Piece was the most censored show. I thought actually Ultimate Muscle was. I have a good censorship story with Ultimate Muscle.
Let's go right into it. Please, let's just dive in. I love it.
Okay, so the standards and practice person at Fox, because we were on Fox Kids at that point, called me one day and said, John, we need to talk about butt crack. And I said, we do? She goes, yes. There's only so much butt crack we're willing to take from Kid Muscle. So we had to negotiate how much butt crack could be seen in this character. And I thought it was hysterical. And I said to her at one point, we're both adults. Can you believe we're talking about butt crack? But anyway, so
wow.
So yeah, they really took a stand on that.
Okay, so that's really interesting that Ultimate Muscle probably had more censorship. That's new to me. So that your first job at 4Kids, though, was Ultraman Tiga. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you come into 4Kids. I know you had a background in, I think, reality television. Is that right?
That's correct.
Oh, my God, my research. Look at me.
Well done.
I'm a researcher. So was this all just crazy to you? Like, you're like, what is this company? What are they doing? What is anime? Or was this something you knew a lot about?
No, I didn't know anything about it, to be honest with you. I knew Norman and Kathy because we had worked together previously. But I had just sort of dissolved the production company that I had and did some projects for MTV, for Animal Planet. But I had never worked in, for kids programming. And certainly it never, this wasn't anime because Ultraman was live action. But just the humor was new to me. So
right. And the translation of the humor, sometimes it works, sometimes it is way off.
Oh, yeah. I have plenty of conversations about One Piece in terms of translations. It was...
Yeah.
Yeah, and I Norman at one point said, John, you got to choose your battles. And I go, okay, I do it. But I went to the mat on something. Again, this isn't, can I jump to One Piece?
Yes, please do. Because One Piece is what we have the most questions about. Okay. So please jump right ahead. Yeah.
So it became just the person I dealt with who was the Japanese, translator. She just made things very difficult. And and so I went to the mat on something. She said, well, Luffy wouldn't say good work. He'd say good job. And I said to her, oh, okay, that's interesting because really there is no difference. If you were saying something to somebody, they did a good job and they did good work, either way. And I went to the mat on that because she was insistent that it had to be one and not the other. And
wow.
And I just thought, oh God, this is just, It was true. Norman was right. I chose the wrong battle.
So that was stuff that was just lost in translation, I assume?
Well, that's being more generous than I was being.
Okay. No, please go tell us.
I just felt it was just one of these aggressive things. She just wanted to win that one. And so I don't think it was her not understanding. I think it was her not wanting to be wrong.
Wow, that's a very frustrating way to work in a creative field.
Yeah, it was.
Like, yeah.
It was.
So I want to let's go back to the beginning of One
Sure.
Piece, because when we spoke to Norman, he basically said we shouldn't have acquired this show. It was not a show for children. And then you are handed this show that was not made for children, which again, I commend you for taking on this project, because that could not have been easy, especially now that I know what you were dealing with. What was your reaction when you saw this and saw the kinds of content and the kinds of edits you were going to have to make?
Well, I guess I'm not remembering what I should be remembering, because I don't remember it being daunting at the beginning. I remember
Okay.
the hardest thing in the beginning was I was procrastinating about the title song. And finally, the person Kathy, who was working with me, Kathy Patera, said, John, the deadline for that song is coming up. So I finally had the idea to do this rap song. And I will say that the best experience I had with the group of Japanese, our counterparts, was then when they sat down and they listened to the theme song, they all applauded. It was a great moment.
Wow.
It was really unexpected.
Yeah. We spoke to Sean Conrad, who did the theme song, and he's the best. There was another version of a song that was done before that, correct? That was closer to the original.
Yeah, it was an English version of the Japanese opening.
I guess I'm not as familiar with all the, all the different versions of One Piece there are, because I only knew ours as the original and the first. I know that when I Google it, I still find our version in terms of the song.
Right. There was a very obscure version that I think was used probably before you were brought on board, because I think it was to sell the show originally. So they must have recorded this before you were working on it, because 4Kids did record another version. Yeah.
Did they really? This is news
Yeah.
to me, so I did not know that.
Do you remember, like, it kind of, you taking the helm on the series, and was it just like, all right, we need did someone be like, hey, we need our own version of an opening, we need our own, like, a different spin? Or do you always remember it being like, we want to do a rap? I'm curious if you recall that.
Well, it was neither. It was, first of all, there was no different spin in my mind, because I didn't know there was another one that predated ours. So that was that. But the rap thing came up, was my idea. And then Sean ended up doing the rap and came up with some of the lyrics. But I just remember originally I did what I thought was the only version, and the original version. I remember performing it for John Ziegler and Norman in John Ziegler's office. And, I'm not a natural rapper or whatever, so it was kind of awkward. But I just had this idea for what it should be. And
I love it. Yeah. It is a very beloved song. I feel like you've made your mark with that for sure.
But I haven't seen the Netflix series. What are they using that song or not? Something? No. Okay.
Yeah.
No,
it's vastly different.
It's but yeah, I think 4Kids and 4Kids alone, and and Sean and you and everyone else, they have every claim to the rap. It is exclusively the 4Kids version, but it's you still hear about it. People are very aware of it even to this day.
Got it.
Like, we talked to Sean, and like, that's how some people started finding Sean online, is they were contacting him specifically because of the One Piece rap, not for anything else. And he didn't know
he's done so many other things. Yeah.
And he didn't know what to think of it at first, but then he said the response was overwhelmingly positive. So since he's talked a lot more about what went into that.
Yeah. That's great.
So what was aside from that one woman who was very difficult, were you working with the Japanese team pretty closely on this project?
No, she was the only one who I really dealt with directly. And, you know, we would write our scripts and send them to her, and then she would send me whatever notes she had. And usually she didn't have that many notes. So I just trying to remember why I tangled with her about good job, good work, but I did. And I think there was something political going on, because I think she was really good friends with somebody else at 4Kids who we didn't really like. So,
ooh, now I want that.
Yeah,
dirt.
I think there was some dirt there that I'm not going to go into.
That's okay. So you did have, I mean, with Ultimate Muscle and this show, you did have to make edits before, I believe, the final script was written and before the actors saw it. So did you sit down with an editor and say, "Ooh, we can't show that. There's too many guns," or "Here's what needs to be," like obviously the cigarette into a lollipop, things like that?
Right. Our art department did a great job. I remember, and I'm trying to think. I think it was Ultimate Muscle. There were, women were constantly being put up on crucifixes and basically and tortured. And so we'd have to change that a lot.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of cleavage for these young girls, too. That was something that we had to adjust. But yeah, that would come up. We had the most amazing art department that just did an amazing lot of work on these shows. And I'm drawing a blank who's the guy who
Ryan Kelly, I know, did a lot of it. Yes, we're trying to get in touch with him for sure.
Ryan is awesome. Ryan and I worked on a project that I did that basically had to do with porcelain plates that I did with the mayor of LA. We did these, commemorative plates, and Ryan did design them. He was amazing. He's such a talented guy.
We've heard he is the king of covering cleavage, basically, from 4Kids. Yeah, that's his new title.
And what's great about Ryan is that he doesn't even sigh. He just looks at the work and knows that he has to get it done, and he just does it. He doesn't complain. Yeah. He doesn't, fret. He's just amazing that way.
Yeah, that's who you want to be working with. Because that, 4Kids in general was so collaborative, and we've spoken about this before, how unusual it was for all of us to be on one floor of one building. Like, you could walk down the hall to the music department or the art department. Have you ever experienced anything like that before or since, where it's so what's the word I'm looking for? Communicative. No, that's not a word. It's such a community. Let's go.
Yeah, I got that. I think it probably was the place that I experienced that more than anywhere else. Because usually you're at studios, you're different departments, different, annexes and stuff like that. So it definitely was that, which was great. And, I just want to credit Norman for so much of the way it was laid out, just the vision of it. Mm-hmm. He really knew what it needed to entail, and he had it done.
Hey, Tara here. Just want to let you guys know that Steve and I will both be heading to some conventions near you, hopefully soon. Steve will be at Anime Expo in Los Angeles, July 4th weekend. He'll have a booth there, so go say hi. He'll also be at Anime NYC, August 23rd through 25th. If you want to come say hi to me, I will be at Tokyo X, June 15th and 16th in Houston, Texas. Anime El Paso, June 22nd, 23rd in El Paso. HypeCon in San Francisco, June 29th. The Long Island TCG Show, July 14th. Heroes Hideout in Albany, New York, September 28th. And we'll both be adding new stuff soon. You can also head to our social media accounts for more of this information. I'm at Tara Sands VO. Steve is at Steve Yurko. And I hope to meet you in person soon. We had some specific questions about One Piece that, again, it was a long time ago. So if you don't remember, just say I don't remember and we'll move on. But Steve, there were some things I know. It was not necessarily changes for censorship, but there were changes to storylines or things cut. Steve, do you have specific examples of things like that?
Well, let me just start with were you watching these episodes ahead of time with the editors? Were you overseeing that process too? or was this something like the people screening these would come to you with? I'm curious, like how closely you were working in the in the production side of it.
So based on my memory, I don't think it was as complicated as that. I think we were working like one episode or whatever ahead. And I didn't have editors look at stuff. I would basically go through stuff and assign it to a writer. And, the issues usually had to do with the characters specifically who were featured in that particular episode. I'm trying to remember all the different characters' names in One Piece. It was Luffy. Who was the woman?
Nami?
Nami.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Sanji.
Mm-hmm.
Sanji, right. And so we try to keep it true to their characters and their voices, but I don't remember a lot of in advance edits that needed to be done based on things that were visually, inappropriate. I just don't remember that with One Piece.
Interesting. So cutting whole storylines is not something that was on your radar.
No, I think there were some storylines that we changed to make them more accessible,
mm-hmm.
but not because they were inappropriate.
Okay, that's good to know.
If and if I could throw out a specific here, because this is one. Sure. This is something curious that it's not as obvious as this is a little too violent. That there are a couple story arcs that are skipped over. There was one with a giant whale that the main characters wind up getting they get swallowed by akin to Pinocchio, and that was completely kind of rearranged and replaced with an iceberg. I'm curious, do you remember that at all? And I would love to know why that decision was made.
I don't remember that at all. Honestly, I'm trying to remember why I don't remember stuff like that, but
because it was a long time ago. Yeah. I've forgotten most of it.
Yeah,
because there was another arc too. There was an arc that was it was on a prehistoric island. Sorry, I know this is why I'm here, because I remember the specifics.
Yeah,
there's a prehistoric island with two giants fighting. And it's a decent chunk of episodes, and that was also removed. And I don't know if that also sounds familiar at all.
It doesn't, and I'm just trying to figure out how that happened in terms of whether were we getting already pre-edited episodes. I'm not sure, because I would remember that. I for sure I would remember stuff like that if I basically had to deal with that. So. But I'm just trying to figure out who would have done that in advance of us seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know anybody who saw the episodes in advance of us other than the Japanese company.
Right. So maybe it was a decision on their end that we just haven't spoken to the right people yet. Because that's part of this podcast, is figuring out who the people are making the decisions, because you're not the first person to say that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So even things like with Ultraman, lots of sound effects missing. So we're trying to figure out, did they just not have them in the Japanese? Because Susie, one of the editors, put in a lot of the sounds afterwards. So we're why weren't they there? There's just a lot of mystery surrounding some stuff that happened there.
Yeah. And again, I think I would remember stuff like this, they would jar my memory. Just on Ultraman, have you spoken to Mike Pecorello?
Yes,
okay.
We did.
Good, awesome.
Yeah. So something like dubbing a live action as opposed to a cartoon, it's never, it's a cartoon is always going to dub more easily than live action. Yep. What did you think of that process, and was it frustrating because it's never going to be perfect?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Norman basically taught me to aim for perfection. So we didn't think about it not being perfect. We thought we just had to come up with the words that match the lip flap. So I think we did a really good job of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, for sure. It's just I know as a dubber, so as someone who's doing the voiceover, I am always happier with how my voice looks in a cartoon as opposed to live action, so it's my frustration that I'm projecting. But yeah, I remember working on it and being oh, they're getting this done.
Yeah.
So, And I know there was unaired episodes of Ultraman. Do you know, first of all, are you sitting on any copies of it? Because people would love to know where the lost media is.
For sure. No, for sure on that.
Do you know why not everything aired?
I don't know. And again, I don't know if stuff that we actually worked on didn't air, or did they just not give us stuff that in the end we never dealt with.
Right.
I just don't think we ever did the work and then it never aired.
You think it just wasn't there in the first place?
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
Because
that makes more sense.
Yeah, that makes more sense too. So again, but I don't know who would have done that deleting in advance of us seeing it.
Yeah, that's a good question. And we have not spoken to any of the Japanese counterparts yet. So that now I have a whole new list of people to contact.
I do have a question, like that's kind of like the opposite of that. With Ultimate Muscle, I think more episodes were commissioned from the Japanese side because I don't think that show was all that successful in Japan, but I think it did good enough in the US that another season was commissioned. Do you recall that at all?
Steve, I'm sorry to say I don't. I really
it's fine.
Have more.
Like a lot of these things too. I'm asking these are things I read on the internet. I read, and like a lot of this is like rumor and conjecture sometimes. So like always trying to say like maybe we could get an answer right here, but that might have been the case. But yeah, I haven't heard from anyone like that.
The only thing I would say is that just in terms of on a practical level, I just don't think we ever would have done work on episodes that didn't air. I just don't think, financially there would be any incentive to do that. And there'd be every incentive to air everything we worked on. So that's why I think anything I don't know about, I felt like we didn't deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wonder what their oversees what their reasoning would be for not wanting to send certain episodes. Maybe they weren't happy with how they came out and they thought, why share this with the world? Or who knows? Or maybe they were so specific to their culture or something that it just wouldn't translate.
Those are good questions.
A million reasons. Yeah.
It was always with the notes, it would be what the sensei didn't want or the sensei this. And I almost would not rudely, but sort of ridicule the sensei. It's like, what does a sensei know anyway? Because he was always treated as like the genius. And I would think, really? So anyway.
And I'm sorry, who is the sensei then? Am I missing something?
The sensei is the creator of the
creator, okay.
Yeah.
Of whatever project you were working on at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you asking about Funky Cops at all?
I can't wait to talk about Funky Cops.
Great.
Okay, that was my next thing. So, my first question is, after taking out all of the guns in One Piece, why were the Funky Cops allowed to have guns?
It's a good question. Maybe because it was French,
But they aired the guns in the U.S., I think maybe because they were licensed officers or because they were more decorative and not pointed at anybody.
Here's where I thought it didn't air in the U.S. Funky Cops did air?
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
It's a good question. I don't know. Maybe because they were just, they were just taking off actual, live action series that already existed.
Possibly. I mean, when I talk to the staff at 4Kids, Funky Cops is often their favorite show. Like they enjoyed editing or doing mixing on Funky Cops because they found it so much fun. Do you remember if you dubbed all of the episodes of that? Because that's like a fan favorite that people want episodes of and they want to see it again.
I'm glad to hear that. Again, my memory is not going to be great, but the thing I will tell you is this. I think we all know this already, but Andrew Reynolds is one of the most talented people I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
When we auditioned him, there was no question he was right for the role. He brought so much to that character. He's just amazing. I'm just dazzled by his talent, frankly.
Yeah, I always say, I saw him during that time in, an off Broadway play that he was doing. And he walked on stage, and I was like, oh, he has it. He has X Factor. Whatever that is, he's got it. It's not a surprise that he's where he is today.
It's not.
But that whole cast was great.
Yeah, it was great.
Funky
It was
Cops.
totally great. I felt great about that show. I loved it.
The music was great. Do you remember who was John Stiegler, the primary music person you worked with on
Yes,
that?
and I'm not sure who the other composers were, but John, again, we had a lot of fun with that show. And it seemed to be like an afterthought in a way. Because it was French and it wasn't part of the whole Japanese, business that they were doing. But I felt very lucky to get that show because I really enjoyed it so much.
That is when we need to dig up the lost tapes.
Yeah.
I mean, we have no, I wonder if they're at Konami somewhere. Like, none of us know where these lost missing footage is. It's such a shame.
Yeah. Well, Norman would know if anybody would know. So
he did not seem to have, and he wasn't hiding anything. I'm looking in the background of his Zoom, trying to see if there's hidden tapes.
Yeah.
But we found a few things, but not. Mike Pecorello did have some Ultraman stuff.
Oh, great.
So
good.
Stuff that possibly didn't air. So we'll hopefully get that out there. But so Funky Cops, who are you collaborating with on that? Because there's a lot of very specific humor in that show. So does that make it trickier to find the right writers and collaborators? Or did you just have a team you were assigned?
I think it's the latter. I'm thinking about it now, Tara, and I think in many ways, I don't think I produced as well as I could have because I probably should have thought about bringing in the right writers for these stuff. But we basically used who was available that we used because writing Lip Flap to me was the hardest part of it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, then I shouldn't say it, but Lip Flap came first, the humor came second. And because I saw other networks that would air, anime stuff where the Lip Flap didn't match at all. And I just thought, oh God, that's just terrible. It's like you just lose the whole illusion of it. So, we did what we could, but I thought we did pretty good with the humor.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just curious, how the writers were assigned, but it was like a machine there. It was like an ensemble there where we had a team of writers. And again, you're right. They knew how to write to Lip Flap, which is so important. And often, I don't know how often you were in sessions, but we would judge things in sessions. We're like, oh, what should we hit to make this funnier? Because again, the writers didn't always necessarily, if it was a new show, they didn't know how it was going to be read. Once it was going for a bunch of episodes, I feel like it was a pretty fine-tuned machine.
Right.
Was that your experience?
Yeah. And again, I'll be honest, I don't think we ever got together as writers as a team. I think it all happened in the edit room with whoever the writer was, and me, and we would just get it done.
Yeah. I mean, we were on a pretty tight schedule.
I was about to say that the schedule really demanded us.
Yeah, please talk about
that.
Well,
no, because it was. I mean, it had to be efficient as much as anything. We didn't have the luxury of, all this time to, dwell on how we should best make this work. It was just about making it work. And, I give a lot of credit to the actors, not just Andrew. I think actors who knew about Lip Flap really helped us along so much in terms of getting these things recorded to, on schedule.
Right. Well, I mean, we've spoken to some of the directors too. They kind of knew how fast each actor worked. Sometimes I think Eric Stewart said to me once, well, we brought you back because you were fast. It wasn't like, oh, you were the most you worked fast. You understood. You could count the lip flaps. You could get it done. And we needed to save money and work quickly.
Right. And honestly, I would say that was the modus operandi at 4Kids. It really had to do with budget. We're not in a position to make these things as brilliant as they could be.
Right. I know. And I feel like if we all got together and redubbed an episode, it could be just vastly better and different now. But we were working under constraints. And that's not to say the work wasn't good, because I would never say that. I can only say that about myself, to be honest. I watched a clip of something recently and I thought, oh, that read sounds like I'm matching the lip flap. If I had done one more take, I could have smoothed it out and it would have been a great read.
Right.
I can hear myself thinking about the lip flap.
Right. Yeah.
And so as a writer, I'm sure when you started writing, you never thought, oh, I'm going to be having to write to lip flap or like, or things like that. Was it?
It was totally new for
strange?
me. And I'll be honest with you, I remember bringing in a friend who's a writer, who basically was the writer on Big Brother, the first season that I produced.
Mm-hmm.
Teaching somebody about lip flap is not easy. It's, you just are, because you're just breaking it down.
Yeah.
And that just getting somebody to get it was not easy.
Especially with the antiquated technology we were using at the time.
Right.
The VHS tapes. And now I would assume it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
With technology.
Right. But you have to look for every little, movement. And yeah, it wasn't easy. I mean, I remember trying out writers all the time, and it would take a week to find out somebody just couldn't nail it. So you'd have to start all over again. Yeah. Because some people just could not nail it.
That's so interesting. So what was that process like? Did you have freelance writers submit scripts? Like, I didn't know any of this was going on.
Freelance writers who basically, you'd give them scripts and say, here you go. This is what, whatever. And then they would deliver them, and I'd have to go through them and think, oh my God, this is not even close. I remember Matt Durdick. Did you talk to Matt?
Yeah, he's great.
Because I know he had a friend who was trying to be a writer. And I was just so frustrated. I said, Matt, your friend doesn't get it at all, And I thought, I don't have time. I don't have time to fix this,
What are some of the qualities you'd be looking for in the writing? Like what were some of these bullet points that people had to nail in these scripts?
Well, the lip flap, first of all, and then basically the character. They had to get the basics of a character and the humor. So it was I'll tell you, Steve, that was a combo platter. Those three things were enough.
Yeah. But you said like you really prioritize lip flaps. It almost seemed like you said that in like order of priority. I am curious. Yeah,
I did because, a kid watching this or anybody watching this wouldn't know that a joke was supposed to go in that line there. The joke was that was the beauty part, if you could get a joke in there too. But if the lip flap worked, it looked like, well, that's what was meant to be there. Mm-hmm. Because you didn't miss any joke you didn't know was supposed to be there. But
right. And by the time, by the time it got to us, it was in really good shape. But we also, as actors, knew if we would see like who wrote the script, and we would know, oh, this person, I need to stretch lines, or this person, I need to talk faster for certain writers, which was great. Yeah, it was great to know that, though. Like, it wasn't good or bad. It's just how they were hearing the lines in their head, because every writer was reading it at a different pace in their head.
Yeah. And I remember starting with Ultraman that I was bringing in a whole new group of actors. I remember Eric Stewart said to me, John, there are only certain actors that can do this. And I thought to myself, well, that's because you're only using certain actors to do this. But I think a lot of people could do this. But that was part of, for me, trying to get variety of characters, because when I started, there were just a certain amount of people who were doing all the shows. And I just thought you should really be branching out a little bit more. And I remember Chris Collet was one of the people I brought in to audition, and he ended up being the director for us.
Of One Piece, yeah.
And he did a great job.
Coming to it, because Chris has an acting background, I think a lot of those people made the best directors.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, they understood the frustration of dubbing it and how to talk to the actors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You worked with you really did work with some great people. I've always wondered why there were so few of us dubbing all the shows. But the truth is, I think the learning curve of learning to dub, they just didn't have time. Yeah,
it was hard. I'm trying to remember who it was, and I'm probably better off not remembering. But I remember I had one person I hired as a director. It may have been ahead of Chris, who was one of the actors who just wasn't getting it. So I finally said to him, you really need to pay attention to whatever. And he goes, I'll never forget it. He goes, you've just ruined my mojo. And I just thought, I am so sorry.
You need you need that on a T-shirt.
Yeah, I know that. And I thought to myself, oh God, this is terrible.
Amazed that's not a line from the Austin Powers franchise.
Yeah,
I am curious, how much a role did you play in the casting side of it? Because I'm not sure if and maybe Tara can answer this too. I don't know if there's specific casting directors involved in productions, or this was up to you, or it's a collaboration between you and the director.
No, it was really more up to me, frankly, as I remember it.
Were you the one making decisions about accents and things like that going into the show? Because we've spoken to a few different people about the decision to put accents on certain characters.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the character we had who was had a Southern accent, I think in Ultimate Muscle and stuff like that. And I remember getting all these books about different, Southern expressions for certain things. And we just wrote up a storm. But was that my idea? I'll be honest with you. And again, this is not to make it this is not ego driven. I just don't remember having anyone other than Mike and Ultraman, who I felt I worked really closely with. But after that, there was nobody who I was constantly connecting with in terms of either directors or writers that helped make decisions,
Right.
So
right. I know Veronica spoke about that she got some backlash for doing an accent in One Piece, and it's you can't please everyone. Sometimes it's just done to differentiate characters because there's so many characters.
And I don't remember who Veronica is, but more power to her. I think if she did that, that's awesome, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And I know Sanji, again, for all the people that love a show, you're going to mostly hear from the people who are disgruntled, unfortunately. I've been yelled at for shows I've worked on over the years at conventions, and I'm I didn't write that. I didn't. But were you aware of any backlash about any of the shows going on at 4Kids back in the day?
From what, fans?
Yeah. Because there's always, again, you get the fan letters and then you get the disgruntled teenagers.
Well, I never really thought any of the shows I worked on had a fan base whatsoever. Nobody was more shocked than me to find out that One Piece became this big cult favorite.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, because it was redubbed by another company in Texas where it was, because they didn't have to edit out the cigarettes and things like that, it was a truer adaptation because there were no restrictions.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, yeah. So that's where it really blew up.
And were they being attentive to lip flap? I feel like I remember seeing another version of One Piece where the lip flap was off, but it was just with a different theme song.
Maybe
there is another English dub that was for Singapore, I believe. I think it's called the Odex dub. That was another other side of the world, but an English produced dub. Might be that one, because that one is a very I would say it feels like a very rushed production from what I've seen of it. So maybe
that's what you saw.
Steve, you know your stuff. I'm impressed.
Oh, he's a One Piece encyclopedia.
It's part of the reason why I'm here is I remember it's Tara worked there watching. And then I saw a lot of it. So
well, I think too, because he was a kid for some of the early stuff 4Kids did. And I remember shows better that I watched as a kid than the shows that I actually worked on. You know what I mean? Memory's so tricky in that way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's sentimental and it's nostalgia, and that's so strong. And that's why we're doing this podcast and why we're talking to people like you, because again, I go to these conventions and fans thank me for certain shows, or they have questions about Ultimate Muscle that I can't answer. So I'm you should be thanking John Kalish. He's the one who might know the answers to these things. So on their behalf, thank you for putting your time and effort into making these shows.
Oh, sure. I had such a good time when I was at 4Kids, I have to say.
Were those the main shows, or did you go on to work on other things there as well?
No, those were the main shows. I'm trying to think. Yeah. No, my other main project was my dog Stella, who I had basically adopted when I ran for some lunch at 4Kids. I basically jaywalked across 23rd Street bumped into this dog who looked at me like, watch where you're going, buddy. I have rights too. And I fell in love. I called Kathy Borland up. Well, Kathy, come down because you know about dogs. What do you think about this dog? And I adopted her on the spot.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Was she one of the office dogs? I know there were 2 dogs I would see, and there was a rabbit in the office.
Well, she was an office dog until we got found out she was big. So I basically
she was too big.
I put her in a duffel bag in the back elevator, and I'd go up. But one day they found her out, and so I wasn't allowed to bring her anymore.
Oh,
yeah.
But these are the behind-the-scenes stories that I kind of love about 4Kids because it sort of sets the whole environment. Like I always say, like this could only exist in New York. So much of what happened there.
I agree.
Like Brenda talked about Cappy, the homeless guy that she talked to every day, and like there's just certain things that are so New York about all of it.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Great location too, I have to say.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Were you there before they officially opened that 23rd Street office? Where I believe Ultraman recorded at Taj Productions for a little bit. Is that? Do you remember
Taj
that?
sounds familiar. No, I just remember the 23rd Street.
Okay. Did you have an office there, or were you?
I had an office.
Writing and working.
No, I had an office for sure.
And I know Crystal Marcus said she worked with you. She had one of the funnier jobs. She was in charge of writing down every time code where a cigarette appeared, and that it had to be replaced. So I think that's such a funny.
That is a funny job. Yeah.
I want to go back to One Piece for a second too. I'm trying to.
Yeah, no, I will ask, and this is something you were saying you weren't aware of fan bases at all. Like, I'm curious if you remember how One Piece was presented to you, because it was already immensely popular in Japan, and was that ever brought up to, or was this another here's your next show? You don't recall any of that. I'm surprised there was no.
I think it was more. I'll be honest with you, Steve. Here's what I remember, but I may be jaded. It was Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and then everything else. And I was part of the everything else. I don't remember One Piece being presented to me as being successful, but Norman could have done it. I don't think he would sell it short. I just don't remember it having a fan base. And I think I would have felt the pressure of a fan base, actually, in terms of stuff like that. So I felt in many ways these were things that were ready to go, and however we would want to do it.
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, I think you just said something like, I think you would recall something like that if it was like, hey, like this is a big one.
Right.
Sound like, from what you're saying, just sounds like, it's like, here's the next thing.
Yeah.
With Ultimate Muscle, that now that I'm realizing it really was probably the most censored show. Did you watch it? Were there other things aside from the butt crack that were major sticking point? Like, I still can't believe that was on the air with Dick Van Dyke and his friends. Are there any other specifics?
Well, I remember, this was just one little thing. It's probably inappropriate to mention, but there was one thing that I wrote where somebody's wound became infected, and I said it was full of pus. But I wrote, instead of pus, I said it's pussy. But it read. So the censor calls me up and goes, "What the hell are you writing?"
That is lost in translation. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes. That's just a misread.
Yeah, that was a misread. So
see, those are the stories I love. Okay.
But as far as it's just that torturing of women, basically, in crucifixes. Those were amazing. I couldn't believe the actual original stuff. I said, I can't believe this airs for kids.
It is amazing what they get away with over there.
I've even gone back and revisited. I'm surprised what made it air. Like the fact that your main character can literally be constantly pissing himself, and that got through. I think there's even there's some stuff where he's just he's ogling magazines with supermodels in them. I'm like, wow, this made it.
Right, but a cigarette,
yeah, and I give the standards and practice people a lot of credit because it was so inappropriate that I think they just chose talking about choosing their battles. I think they basically said no to some stuff, but let other stuff go through.
Eric Stewart had a method for getting things through where he would present 3 versions. One would be the one he wanted that they would have probably said no to, but then he would put in like 2 other, like one unfunny version and one really offensive version so that they would pick his version.
Got it. That's interesting.
Did you ever do anything like that?
No, I didn't do that.
That was very innovative of him at the time, I think. One final One Piece question before we talk about what you're doing now. We know that there were unedited versions of Yu-Gi-Oh! Made and of Shaman King made. There was talk that there was an unedited DVD version of One Piece. Do you recall ever recording that? There's one actor who thinks they recorded that, but
I don't remember that. No, sorry to say.
No, so that will be another mystery
Yeah.
for us to solve. Can you tell us a little about what you've done since your days at 4Kids? Some fun projects that we should check out?
Well, let's see. What have I done since 4Kids? Yeah, well,
It's been a while.
it has been a while. Yeah, I think I ultimately did. I'm just trying to think if I continue to do reality or not. You know, as the first showrunner, Big Brother. But I think what I'm doing now, to me, is just interesting because I really am not in TV. I tutor to a 7th grader who's just awesome. I've been tutoring for 3 years, and that's great in English and comprehension and stuff like that. I work for a political organization called Field Team 6, and we register Democrats specifically. And
love that.
I'm in meetings. Like this morning, I was in a Texas meeting that I go to every week, and Texas Grassroots Alliance. And I'm currently working on a memoir.
Oh, that's exciting.
Which is very exciting. And
yeah,
it's going along well, and I've got some really interesting stories and stuff from my days at Entertainment Tonight and Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. So,
So who was more difficult, the cast of Big Brother or the cast of characters at 4Kids?
I actually had to go in at midnight to Big Brother and tell them all they were about to be fired because they were incredibly boring. And if they refused to engage with each other, then we already had a second cast lined up and we were ready to go with them. It was
oh my gosh.
It was wild. And so they got the message.
Okay, so that I'm going to guess that was the more difficult.
That was definitely
group.
the more difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, no question.
Well, Steve, unless you have any final questions, we'll let you go on with your day, John.
Okay.
All good.
Did you have anything else, Steve? You're good?
I'm sorry I didn't have more information. I really wish I had remembered more stuff for you guys.
You are not alone. I don't remember a thing. So that is why I have Steve here to remind me. And honestly, you're so not alone in that. Memory is tricky. It's like suddenly, like I'll remember one certain session from back in the day, but everything else is just a blur in one big dubbing session to me.
Right. Got it. Well, I enjoyed this so much, and good luck with this project. Let me know what happens with it.
Pleasure,
you
John.
too. And thank you so much for talking with us. And that was John Kalish. Really cool to talk to somebody who worked on, first of all, a property we have not talked a lot about, which is Funky Cops.
As much as we joke about it, that's what the people want to hear. I know there are some people that do want to hear about it. Never feel like any series here are more important than the others.
No, but we just don't hit on that one as much. It is like kind of a
and Terra was Terra's Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, reoccurring in that a lot. And I'm Mr. One Piece over here. Don't take that as favoritism. This is just what we know.
That's what we know.
Mm-hmm.
But Funky Cops I'm going to have to dig up and watch a little bit of, because it really is a favorite of some of the staff, which I think says a lot, because they probably weren't into watching some of the shows they had to edit, and they spent a lot of time with them.
And it wasn't anime. It's like it was what was the French doing, American 70s media.
It's so genre specific. Again, that's a great question for the acquisitions people. That almost seems like a Fox late night animated show more than it does a kid's Saturday morning show. So
Right.
I'd love to hear the thought process. And I'd almost love to see an updated version of that. Like, I could cast that in my dreams, like great voices for that show. And I need to go back and listen to Andrew Rannells in it because, again, more people singing the praises of Andrew.
It's crazy. Yeah, and I think he's in the new Trolls movie.
Probably.
Yeah. So it's like, the trajectory sometimes. So it all makes sense.
Unlike the rest of us, though, who really 4Kids was some of our first animation jobs, Andrew did have a background in doing voiceover for animation. In his like small town where he grew up, I've heard him talk about this before. He was doing that already, even before Pokemon Live. So he came at it with a different set of skills than I think the rest of us did, which is so interesting. All right, we are going to work on getting him to talk to us. I'm going to bug him.
Big get. No.
It's a big get, but like I don't know if the phone number I have for him is still, I don't know. It's probably been changed.
Yeah, I had to change mine. Yeah, I don't know.
When you moved, yeah.
No, only like fairly recently but yeah, now I don't know who's been trying to get a hold of me.
Right, you just never know.
Sometimes I have some people. It's like, yeah, I wish you a happy birthday. He didn't respond, and I didn't know what to think of that. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got a new number.
Oh, yeah. Then people think you're ignoring them.
Yeah.
Well, listen. If
Maybe I've left a lot of friendships to rot.
Yeah, people are mad at you.
Yeah.
Oh, they're so mad at you, Steve. Yeah. So. And if anyone's friends with Andrew wants to reach out on my behalf, since I might have an old email, I'll try to get in touch with him, though. And just, even if he says no, I feel like I need to put the effort out and talk to him.
I feel like I have to. I think, since doing the show, I didn't realize, I'm like, oh, wow, he played a lot, a much bigger role there than I thought. I thought he was just
really
an actor.
was.
I didn't realize, oh, he was one of the directors there. So. Yeah.
Well, I don't know I think we've spoken about this, but maybe not. He does have a book out, his second book, I believe, where he does talk about deciding to leave 4Kids and that it was a big decision. He got a Broadway show and that, not everyone was like, go do the show. Some people were like, you have a great thing here. Like he had, all the perks of working for a big company, and a Broadway show has a limited lifespan usually, but he figured it out. He's doing it right.
I don't envy him at all. Like it worked out, but like, all I could think of is just like the current climate we're working in.
Yeah.
I'm like, like,
right.
I don't know if I would, if someone was in that position in 2024.
It's a different kind of decision now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think about even when I moved, I had to give up a couple of roles at 4Kids, and that was a tough decision.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a full-time job there. So that was a much different kind of decision-making process. Oh, enough about Andrew.
I was going to say, all I could think of is when I moved, I'm like, oh, I got to give up, the place I always go to when my car is acting up. I got to find a new person to trust. I will say,
moving is hard.
Go ahead.
Moving's hard. Yeah, no, just in general, and moving across the country like we did, and like so many people from 4Kids did. John Kalish included. He was talking to us from LA. But it's not easy. So
no.
I commend people who've done it.
The One Piece stub will continue to be so many mysteries left to solve here. And to be fair, some of them are so hyper specific questions, but
it is interesting.
It feels like there's so many hyper specific choices in that dub.
Right, and maybe we're overthinking. I mean, and again, maybe this goes for the whole podcast, and for people in general who are asking us to ask very specific questions.
Yeah.
Well, we might just be overthinking all of this. Mm-hmm. Some of these decisions might have been really arbitrary. Some of them might have been that like maybe something just never arrived. Something might have been a decision on the Japanese end that we will never get an answer to.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they made the decision to cut certain things before it was even presented to John, because those major storyline changes really do sound like something a person would remember.
It's major. Yeah,
it's major.
And maybe I'm saying that because of my One Piece bias, and I'm like, no, this is an effort to work around some of these storylines that.
Right. And I wonder if that was made before it got to 4Kids. Like maybe it had been made for another country. Maybe that was part of you were talking about that other dub. Maybe that had been done for that.
As far as I guess the first time I ever talked about that dub specifically, but that was more of they just straight the exact footage, the exact Japanese stuff is they just took from that. So like completely different. I think this is definitely a 4Kids thing for sure.
So someone in the art department might remember then. That's a possibility. God, so many mysteries. I don't like having mysteries. I like solving mysteries. But yeah, the Ultimate Muscle stuff's so funny. And also actually hearing his frustrations with working with certain people from the teams does explain why he chose his battles. Because when you're set up like that from day one, of course you're going to approach everything differently then and choose your battles. But Ultimate Muscle, still, how that got on the air is a big mystery.
Yeah. No, it's like I've revisited the series and I was like, oh wow, like I'm actually surprised by some of this. Like there's still like a bunch of changes too. And I've even like kind of looked up, like there's not too much like stuff devoted specifically to Ultimate Muscle, like covering all the edits. Some people have, and then I'm finding stuff from the early 2000s. But even the stuff that made it past all that, I'm like, I'm shocked that this is on here.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody knows someone who is working in the censorship or on the making these kinds of decisions for the networks at this time, we'd love to talk to them. If anyone can get us in touch, because those are the names we don't have because those were not 4Kids employees. Those were people at a specific network. So hit us up. And if you have a story to tell, if you worked at 4Kids and want to share your story, please do hit us up. If you can fill in any blanks, email us. If you're a lawyer who can explain certain things that went on there with the lawsuits, we'd love to talk to you. And now what do we tell them?
Well, I'll say or if you're just a fan of the show, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show. Please. I know, I think you mentioned this too. It's like the majority of the people you hear about are the people with, complaints.
The angry people.
Well, if there's something you're enjoying about the show, if there was a story you liked, a joke, sometimes that's rare.
If you want to hear more about Steve's breakfast, tell us that, and we will talk more about Steve's breakfast.
Whatever you like.
Yeah, we want this to be as interactive as possible. We did get way ahead on certain interviews so that we weren't able to ask you guys for input, but going forward, we will try to do that as much as possible. Follow us on social media. That's where we are getting a lot of our fan questions. It's just at 4Kids Flashback. It's also at 4Kids Flashback on YouTube. You can chime in there if you can fill in blanks of any singers or performers we're missing on our music stuff. That's always helpful. Patreon, we appreciate our Patreoners. They patrons or Patreoners?
Patrons.
I know, but I think Patreoners is funnier.
Patreoners.
Yeah, our Patreoners.
Sounds like it sounds like what you get into when you get good grades on Patreon. Patreoner Society.
Patreoner Society. That's what you are part of. If you pay money every month, you are part of the Patreoner Society of 4Kids Flashback. I'm going to stop talking now.
Ad-free, week early over on Patreon.
Oh, yeah, that's what you get. You get stuff for that and bonus content. And
if you like us so much, you could check out our online store. We got our logo and some other stuff.
Logo and some other stuff. Steve and I are arguing because I put yayo, yayo, yayo on a shirt. He wants it to be a little bit more intricate.
I know. This is when my perfectionism comes in, and I'm like, we could push it more, but
I think we could have two versions,
sure.
right? Just the yayo, yayo, yayo.
I got like a million things I'm doing right now anyway, so like I shouldn't push. I shouldn't push myself.
So right now the design is left to me, which is a big mistake, and I'm running with it. And then when Steve comes up for air and has more time, he's gonna put down all the designs I put on the website.
That is.
So I don't know if you'll see them.
It's the perfect allegory for I think what my weeks feel like, what my day-to-day basis is. But
all right, well, go take a nap. You've earned it.
I'm gonna go actually eat a meal.
Go eat a meal, then take a nap. That's perfect. Oh, that sounds great. I want to do that. Thank you guys for listening. Baba Booey, Yayo Yayo, and
we'll catch you next time.
4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4Kids Flashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. For podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to Maji, M-A-J-I, .media. Thanks for listening.